I was the village punching bag. Anyone who felt like it
could take a shot.
But every single person who bullied me ended up crippled, one way or another. My foster mother, who called me a bastard and tried to sell me, was struck dumb. My foster brother, who locked me in the pigpen, was swarmed by the hogs and left paralyzed. My foster father, who stole my money, lost a hand in a gambling den. And the mayor's son, who wanted to play a stripping game with me, lost the one thing that made him a man. When my wealthy birth parents finally came looking for me, the butcher knife in my hand was still dripping with blood. It was only then that the villagers realized I wasn't a punching bag. I was a goddamn psycho. I thought my real parents would be horrified, but instead, their faces lit up with excitement. Honey, we're being bullied. Please, will you come home and help us? The mayor's son lay in a rapidly expanding pool of his own blood and gore. My hand, holding the knife, didn't even tremble.
Jed.
My boy. The mayor shoved his way through the stunned crowd, his usually commanding face now the color of bleached paper. He stumbled, his knees giving out, and collapsed into the bloody mess, clutching his son's mangled body. His eyes, burning with a hatred that could have flayed me alive, fixed on me in utter disbelief. You did this?
You bitch.
His roar snapped the villagers out of their trance. The crowd erupted in a chaotic buzz, but strangely, no one dared to step forward. Instead, they all took a collective step back. God almighty, Jed's his thing as it chopped off. It was Quinn. How could she? But she's the girl who never fights back. The one who takes every insult without a word. A wave of terror washed over them. They stared at me as if seeing me for the very first time. Faced with their questions, I just couldn't understand the fuss. I offered a helpful explanation. He said we were good friends, and wanted to play a stripping game. But good friends should be the same, right? I don't have one, so why should he? Dead silence fell over the yard. Then, from somewhere in the quiet, a trembling voice piped up. Her foster mom called her a bastard, and the next day she was poisoned dumb, can't even talk now. Her foster brother threw her in the pigpen, and then he got mauled by the pigs. He's still laid up in bed, can't move. Her foster father, he stole the money she'd saved up, and a few days later, some thugs chopped off his arm. And what about that creep who tried to have his way with her a while back? He fell and broke his leg, nearly drowned in the river. All these incidents, once dismissed as bizarre coincidences, were now being threaded together, and every single thread pointed directly at me, the girl who always kept her head down, the girl who took everything they dished out. The fear in the crowd curdled into pure horror. Seeing the hint of a smile on my face, a woman stumbled backward, scrambling away on her hands and knees. Monster, she whimpered. She's a monster. Could it be? Did she do all of it? Another man stammered, his legs barely holding him up. I ignored them, finding a rough stone to sharpen my knife. The blade was getting dull. A dull knife makes for a messy, unsatisfying job. Just then a long, black Maybach pushed its way through the dirt roads of our village. A man and a woman, dripping with wealth but looking deeply troubled, stepped out. Their eyes scanned the crowd and locked onto me with unnerving precision. Before I could react, the woman rushed forward and threw her arms around me, her voice a raw, desperate cry. My darling daughter, I've finally found you. Oh, thank God. I tensed and used to being touched. My questioning gaze met the red-rimmed eyes of the middle-aged man standing beside her. Quinn, he explained, his voice thick with emotion. We did a test. You're our biological daughter. The villagers gasped, their eyes darting between me, my supposed parents, and the multi-million-dollar car. The terror on their faces began to fade, replaced by a hungry, predatory greed. So, you're her parents? Let me tell you, your daughter has hurt a lot of people in this village. That's right. We all raised her, you know. How are you planning on thanking us? Just look at our mayor's son, still bleeding on the ground.
What are you going to do about that?
The crowd parted, revealing the gruesome scene of the mayor cradling his bloody son. The sticky, crimson mud, the severed piece of flesh lying nearby, it was enough to make anyone gag. But the man, my father, didn't even flinch. He turned to me, his tone as gentle as if he were asking about the weather. Quinn, did you do this?
Quinn.
I liked the name, so I answered casually. His little toy was always wiggling around where it shouldn't. I didn't like the look of it. These rich people, I'd seen them on TV, all polished and proper. They wouldn't want a daughter like me. I was about to tell them not to bother taking me home, but then I heard their thoughts, loud and clear. My God, our daughter is a certified badass. That's how a woman should be.
Fierce.
That's my girl, Alistair Croft's daughter. Now, how should I deal with this pack of vultures? Interesting. For years, everyone in this village had avoided me like the plague. This was the first time anyone had ever actually liked me for who I was. This family, I'll check it out. I turned to the two people who looked so much like me and gave my order. 3 go with you. Alistair and Evelyn Croft exchanged a look, on the verge of tears of joy. But the villagers weren't having it. Their lust for money had finally overpowered their fear of me. One by one, they stepped forward, blocking our path. Hold on. You're not leaving without compensating us. Yeah, your daughter assaulted someone. You think you can just walk away? Let me tell you, if you don't pay up today, none of you are leaving this village. The mayor laid his unconscious son down and slowly walked over. Sir, ma'am, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Your daughter did, in fact, harm my son. It's not unreasonable for the entire village to demand some form of justice, is it? My father, Alistair, started to step forward, but I blocked him with my knife. The huge butcher knife spun in my hand like a tiny toy. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of me catching the handle seemed to beat in time with every villager's heart. A few of them started trembling again. That silent, primal terror crept back onto their faces. I flashed a deceptively innocent smile, then slipped into the car. As the engine roared to life and we pulled away, the crowd was still frozen in place, paralyzed by my presence. Soon, the car entered a quiet, gated community of sprawling mansions. Alistair honked the horn several times, expecting a groundskeeper to open the wrought iron gates, but the man standing by the entrance didn't move a muscle, acting as if he hadn't heard a thing. Alistair shot me an embarrassed smile, trying to salvage some dignity. We're very relaxed with our staff here. Very lenient. His thoughts, however, were a storm of curses. That useless boyfriend of Tiffany's is really pushing it. I pay him $50,000 a month. He's always joyriding in my cars, and now he won't even open the gate for me? Am I going to have to get out and open it myself like I always do? But what will Quinn think? She'll think I'm a pushover. I just smiled, grabbed the steering wheel, and stomped on the gas. The car lunged forward with the force of a battering ram aiming straight for the man. With a sickening crunch of metal on bone, the $1 million Maybach's front end crumpled. The man had jumped back, but not fast enough. One of his legs was caught pinned and broken. Alistair, are you insane?
You hit me.
You got a death wish. Still screaming like a dog, even with a broken leg annoying. I revved the engine again, the car inching forward as if to crush him completely. The man's eyes widened in terror as the tire stopped just a centimeter from his chest. That's my girl. I've wanted to get rid of that little punk for ages. She really took out the trash for me today. Where did she learn to drive like that? I need lessons. I got out of the car, my movements sharp and efficient, and looked at my two shell-shocked parents. Am I in charge of this house? Confused, Alistair and Evelyn nodded. Satisfied, I walked over to the man on the ground and planted my foot directly on his shattered leg. Ag. It hurts. Who the hell are you?
Stop it.
Who dares touch my man? Do you want to die? A sharp, shrill female voice cut through the air. I looked up to see a woman in a fiery red dress storming toward us, her face a mask of fury. Trailing behind her was a slim, pale girl in a white dress. Oh my god, is that my real sister? She's so cool. She actually dared to mess with Tiffany's boyfriend. So, the timid girl with the curious eyes must be the fake heiress Sophie. The girl in red, Tiffany, saw us and struck a haughty pose. Get your filthy foot off my boyfriend. Seeing her, the man on the ground seemed to find his backbone, his voice turning into a pathetic whine. Babe, you have to stand up for me. They drove right into me. If I'm broken, how will I keep my baby happy? His voice grated on my ears like a rusty hinge. I pressed down harder with my foot. Strangely, Alistair and Evelyn, who had stood their ground against the entire village, now seemed to shrink in on themselves in front of this younger woman, Tiffany. Tiffany, we're all family here, Alistair pleaded. Quinn didn't mean it. Uncle will transfer $5 million to your account as an apology. Evelyn also forced a smile, trying to smooth things over. It's all a misunderstanding, just a misunderstanding. We didn't do it on purpose. Even Sophie, the quiet girl, tried to pull Tiffany back. Tiffany, please, let's just drop it. I'll give you that sculpture you liked, okay? But her thoughts were frantic. I have to calm Tiffany down or she'll bully my new sister just like she bullies me. I frowned. Bullying? I don't have much empathy, but if there's one thing I despise, it's people who use their power to torment others. Tiffany, soaking in the apologies and appeasements, started to look smug. She crossed her arms, staring down at me.
Fine.
I'll let it go. But first, I want her on her knees, barking like a dog. Alistair's face hardened. Tiffany, that's going too far. Quinn is your cousin, your elder cousin. Evelyn was right behind him. Absolutely not. We will not let you do that. Sophie's eyes instantly welled with tears, her lip trembling. Tiffany, if you have to break someone's leg, break mine. You can do whatever you want to me, she pleaded. My sister just got here. She doesn't know the rules of the house. Please, let it go this time. The sight of my new family, so pathetic and weak, begging for mercy, struck a nerve. I hate cowards. A fire ignited in my gut. I lifted my foot off the man. Tiffany was about to say something triumphant, a smug smirk already forming on her lips, but she never got the chance. The crack of the blow echoed through the driveway. I slapped her so hard, she flew sideways and landed in a heap on the manicured lawn. For 5 full seconds, no one moved. Then, a flood of silent thoughts crashed over me. What did she just do? She hit Tiffany. That's it. She's my hero. Am I seeing things? My daughter just did what her father never had the guts to do. But what am I going to do when my brother comes looking for revenge? Holy hell. A true warrior. That bastard Marcus won't be able to steal our family fortune now. Tiffany lay on the ground, stunned. You hit me. I flexed my wrist, then grabbed the collar of Tiffany's dress, hauling her up like a stray dog. She struggled uselessly, completely powerless in my grip. The household staff, drawn by the commotion, stared in horror as I dragged the family's proudest peacock across the gravel. A wave of whispers rippled through them, but one hard look from me silenced them instantly. I dragged her right in front of Sophie and kicked the back of her knees. With a thump, Tiffany collapsed to the ground, forced into a kneeling position. Sophie stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and awe, and took several stumbling steps backward. Alistair and Evelyn watched, holding their breath. My voice was tight with irritation. I bit out a single word. Hit her. What? Sophie asked, her voice trembling. My patience frayed. She bullied you before. Bully her back. Sophie glanced at me nervously, then squeezed her eyes shut as if to gather courage and gave Tiffany a tentative slap. It had less force than a mosquito bite. You bitch. You actually hit me. Sophie, you are so dead. Sophie flinched back in terror, but then she met my cold, unblinking gaze. Steeling herself, she stepped forward again and delivered another slap, and another 10 in total, each one harder than the last. The slender girl was panting when she finished, her eyes shining with a newfound sense of triumph and adoration as she looked at me. Thank you, sis. I gave a slight nod, then turned to the assembled staff. Get these two off the property. The staff just looked at each other, not moving a muscle. I pulled out my gleaming butcher knife and began tossing it lightly in my hand. That got them moving. They scrambled to drag the moaning man and the weeping Tiffany away. Alistair looked at me with a complex mix of relief and
Pride.
my daughter did the right thing. But what am I going to do when my brother gets angry? When Dad died, he left the whole company to him. I had to fight tooth and nail to build this business from scratch, and now my brother wants a piece of this too. Dad always said we had to be a united family, but what am I supposed to do? Evelyn, on the other hand, was ecstatic. It's about time someone did that. This is our house, not theirs. What family unity? They've been bleeding us dry for years. Evelyn and Sophie smilingly pulled me into the mansion, with a conflicted Alistair trailing behind. Sophie held my hand, her cheeks flushed, her thoughts racing. My sister is so amazing. I gently pulled my hand away, feeling a bit detached. I turned to Evelyn. I'm tired. I want to rest. The two of them eagerly bustled off to prepare a room for me. But I hadn't been asleep for more than half an hour before Sophie was knocking at my door. Her eyes were wide and watery. She looked at me, hesitating. What is it? I asked, my voice flat. Uncle is here. He's furious. I followed her gaze downstairs. Sure enough, a man was sitting in the main armchair in the living room, acting as if he owned the place. He sipped his tea with an air of arrogant indifference, not even bothering to look up as he delivered his ultimatum to a meek-looking Alistair. Brother, I'm not trying to lecture you, but you have no control over your own daughter. You let her run wild and assault people. I'm only asking for 5% of your company's shares. Consider that a gesture of brotherly love. He drew out his next words, his voice dripping with unveiled menace. If you refuse, well, don't blame me for calling the police. Assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. I imagine your precious, long-lost daughter is going to get very familiar with the inside of a prison cell. Alistair's face went pale, his lips trembling. His thoughts were a chaotic mess. The police? No, I can't let that happen. Quinn just came back. But the shares, that's my life's work. Evelyn's eyes were red with anxiety, but she didn't dare speak up. Sophie hid behind me, her small hand clutching the corner of my shirt, shaking violently. I let out a short, sharp laugh that cut through the tense silence of the room. I took Sophie's hand and walked right over to the sofa where the man, Marcus, was sitting, and plopped down beside him, looking even more relaxed than he did. I met his gaze, my eyes calm, but laced with ice. Call the cops. Fine by me. Let's see who gets locked up first, me or you two, after I kill you. Is this woman insane? I ignored the sudden panic in his thoughts and continued speaking in a low, even tone. At some point, the gleaming butcher knife had reappeared in my hand. I flicked the blade with my fingernail, producing a sharp, clear ring. You could have heard a pin drop in the living room. The arrogance on Marcus's face finally cracked. He shot to his feet, stumbling backward. This is a civilized society. What do you think you're doing? I didn't say a word. With a flick of my wrist, the knife came down, cleaving the porcelain teacup in his hand clean in two. Scalding tea cascaded over his skin, turning it an angry red. Marcus froze, completely stunned. I spun the knife in a practiced motion, the cold steel whistling as it passed less than an inch from his nose, leaving a chill in its wake. Want to find out what it feels like to lose yours? Marcus's face was a mask of livid fury, his chest heaving. He glared at me, a mix of shock and rage in his eyes, but under my unwavering, psychotic stare, he finally lost his nerve. He threw his hands up in defeat, his voice a low growl.
Fine. Just fine.
Alistair, you've raised a real winner. This isn't over. With that, he and a sullen Tiffany beat a hasty and undignified retreat, practically running out the door as if demons were chasing them. The moment they were gone, the suffocating tension in the living room broke. Alistair let out a long, shuddering breath. He looked at me, his expression a strange cocktail of fear and pride. My God, my daughter just scared off that monster. Her methods are terrifying, but damn, did that feel good. Evelyn rushed over and hugged me.
Quinn.
My baby, you are incredible. From now on, Mommy's counting on you. Her thoughts were a triumphant cheer. Finally, someone who can put those vampires in their place. My daughter is my lucky star. Sophie crept closer, her eyes shining. Sis, she whispered, you were so cool. I felt a little awkward and gently broke free from Evelyn's embrace, frowning. Don't celebrate yet. They won't give up that easily. I looked at Alistair, my gaze sharp with impatience. I truly couldn't comprehend how the CEO of a company could be so spineless with his own brother. He shrank under my stare, muttering, I just wanted to keep the peace in the family. Get me all the company's financial records. From every year. Alistair blinked. Quinn, what do you need those for? If you don't want your company bled dry, you'll do as I say. I cut him off, my tone leaving no room for argument. And one more thing. Starting today, we're vetting all the staff again. Anyone who has ties to Marcus or Tiffany or anyone with sticky fingers is fired. All of them. My eyes swept over the servants standing nearby. I saw a few of them flinch. Does she really need to know all this? Alistair wondered internally, but he nodded anyway. Well, the company will belong to her and Sophie one day anyway. It's good for her to get involved early. Evelyn, of course, supported me unconditionally. With my orders given, I turned and went upstairs, leaving my stunned family to process everything. Back in my room, I didn't rest. Based on my hunches, the fragments of Marcus's thoughts I'd picked up, and Alistair's occasional slips of anxiety, I had pieced together the ugly truth of this wealthy family. It just a greedy younger brother and a weak-willed older brother, held hostage by twisted notions of filial piety and brotherly love, while being systematically drained of everything he had. Trouble? I don't mind trouble. In fact, I love nothing more than ripping trouble out by the roots and chopping it into pieces. For the next 2 days, I barely left Alistair's study. Faced with mountains of paperwork, I displayed a shocking speed and comprehension. The complex financial reports and contract clauses were as clear to me as simple arithmetic. At first, Alistair tried to explain things, worried I wouldn't understand. But he quickly fell silent, utterly dumbfounded, when I precisely pointed out several critical loopholes and suspicious transactions. How? How is this possible? She grew up in the middle of nowhere. How does she know all this? Alistair's thoughts were a chorus of disbelief. I didn't bother to explain. Some talents are just innate. A gift for numbers. A merciless appetite for revenge. It didn't take long to trace several clear lines of embezzlement. Funds were being funneled through Tiffany's boyfriend, and a few key executives planted by Marcus all moved through various excuses to oversee shell corporations. The final destination was, undoubtedly, Marcus's own pocket. The amount was staggering. The evidence is solid. We can send them to prison, I announced, closing the final file. But Alistair hesitated. But Dad's dying wish was for us to get along. If word gets out that brothers are fighting, it will look terrible. That excuse again. The familiar irritation flared inside me. This kind of weakness and concern for appearances was, in my opinion, utterly idiotic. Then we'll do it another way, I said, standing up, my eyes like chips of ice. We'll make him spit out every last cent he swallowed with interest. Just then, Evelyn burst into the room in a panic. Quinn, it's terrible.
Sophie.
Tiffany has her cornered at the mall with a group of thugs. She said she's going to slash Sophie's face. Alistair panicked.
Quick.
We have to go save her. It seemed my last lesson wasn't painful enough. I grabbed a set of keys from the desk. They belonged to a black SUV Alistair had bought but was too timid to drive. Send me the address. You two wait here. In the underground parking garage of a high-end downtown mall, Sophie was trapped in a corner by Tiffany and several thuggish-looking men. Her shoulders were slumped, a red handprint stark against her pale cheek. Her eyes were rimmed with red, but she was stubbornly refusing to cry. Sophie, you think just because that psycho is back, you have a protector? Tiffany sneered, the bruises from my last visit still visible on her face, her eyes filled with venom. Let me tell you, she can't even protect herself. Today, I'm going to carve up this pathetic little face of yours and see who comes running to save you then. A blonde punk next to her grinned sleazily, flicking open a switchblade. Why waste time talking, Tiff? Let's just get it done. After you're finished, maybe the boys and I can have some fun, too. Just then, a black SUV came screaming around the corner like an uncaged beast, executing a sharp, aggressive drift that brought it to a perfect halt right in front of them. The bumper was less than a foot from the blonde punk. The screech of tires echoed through the concrete cavern. Everyone froze, startled by the sudden, violent arrival. The driver's door flew open and I vaulted out. Sister. Sophie cried out, tears finally streaming down her face as a wave of hope washed over her. Tiffany was shocked to see me, but her fear quickly gave way to a false bravado. Quinn, you dare show your face here? Today we'll take care of you both. Get her. The thugs she brought exchanged hesitant glances. My presence was intimidating, but they were confident in their numbers and began to close in. I didn't even look at them. I walked straight toward Tiffany. The blonde punk tried to block my path, raising his knife. Before it was even halfway up, my left hand shot out like a viper, clamping down on his wrist with crushing force. I twisted. A sickening crack of bone echoed in the garage. Arg, he howled like a stuck pig, the knife clattering to the ground. Without breaking stride, I drove my foot into his stomach, sending him flying backward into a concrete pillar. He slid to the ground unconscious. The whole thing took less than 2 seconds. The other thugs stopped dead in their tracks, staring at me as if I were some kind of monster. Tiffany was paralyzed with fear, her face drained of all color as she stumbled backward. I stood in front of her. No more words were needed. I simply raised my hand.
Slap, 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 slap.
4 quick, brutal slaps landed with vicious force, leaving Tiffany dizzy and disoriented, her cheeks swelling up instantly. It seems you didn't learn your lesson last time, I said, my voice dangerously low. I grabbed a fistful of her hair, forcing her to look at me. You like carving up faces? I picked up the switchblade from the floor, pressing the cold blade against her perfectly manicured cheek. Tiffany went rigid with terror, tears and snot streaming down her face as she babbled incoherently. No, please. I'm sorry. Quinn, sis, forgive me. I'll never do it again, I swear. Please. Her so-called friends had already vanished, scattering like rats. I let her go in disgust, shoving her away like a piece of trash. Get out of my sight. And tell Marcus he has 3 days to return everything on my list. Or else. My gaze fell on her ruined face. The threat was unspoken, but perfectly clear. Tiffany scrambled away, practically crawling on her hands and knees in her haste to escape, not daring to look back. Only then did I walk over to Sophie. I glanced at the red mark on her face and frowned.
Can you walk?
Sophie nodded vigorously, her eyes shining brighter than the mall's neon lights.
Yes.
Sis, you're incredible. You're my hero. I just grunted in response and led her to the car. As we were driving, Sophie gasped, staring at her phone. Sis, you're trending online. She held the phone out to me. The headline was stark. Quinn Croft, the psycho heiress. There were interviews with the villagers all condemning my wicked behavior. There was footage of Tiffany weeping as she showed the media her bruised face. And then there was Marcus, his face a mask of perfectly crafted sorrow. It's a family tragedy. I never imagined the daughter we found would be like this, he lamented. My own brother. He even struck me for defending her. He turned his head, revealing a faint handprint on his cheek. They're horrible. Sis, what are we going to do? Sophie asked, her voice filled with panic. I smiled. Sophie, I said calmly, connect my phone to the car system. I want to go live. Today, I'll teach you how to send the trash back to the dump where it belongs. Sophie stared for a second, then quickly did as she was told, her trust in me absolute. In moments, the car's large infotainment screen was connected to the country's biggest live streaming platform. I didn't bother with any filters. My face, unadorned and direct, filled the screen, the luxurious interior of the SUV visible behind me. For the title, I typed a single line, live tutorial, how to efficiently take out the family trash. The explosive title, combined with the trending drama of the Croft family saga, sent the viewer count skyrocketing. WTF. It's really her. She has the guts to go live. Is she in a car? Did she just come from the fight? What a crazy title. Can't wait to watch this train wreck. Here for the psycho show. The comments scrolled by in a blur. I adjusted the camera angle to make sure both my face and Sophie's, with her visible injury, were clearly in frame. When I spoke, my voice was steady, almost lazy, as if I were just winding down after a workout. I hear I'm trending. I'm here to clear a few things up. I took Sophie's phone and, holding it up to the camera, scrolled through the headlines and interview clips. First, the accusations from the villagers. I played a clip of a villager tearfully accusing me of being a violent curse on my family, then let out a short, sharp laugh. That? Yeah, I did it. My admission was so blatant it was shocking. The chat exploded. She admitted it. She just admitted it. Is this a clarification or a confession? She's certifiably insane. They simply received a taste of what they wanted to do to me. Is there a problem? My unapologetic stance silenced the stream. Okay, she might have a point. An eye for an eye. Fair enough. But her methods are brutal. You think so? I tilted my head, a smile playing on my lips that was both innocent and cruel. Then you'd better pray you never cross me. I'm not a very moral person, and I'm not entirely stable. Without waiting for a reaction, I swiped to the video of Tiffany's tearful accusations. Miss Tiffany Croft, I said, addressing the camera as if speaking directly to her. You claim I assaulted you without reason? Would you like me to release the full, unedited security footage from the parking garage, sound included? The footage that shows you and your friends threatening to carve up my sister's face. As I spoke, I nodded at Sophie. She immediately pulled up a file on her phone and broadcast it to the stream. A crystal clear video from a perfect vantage point began to play, capturing every word of Tiffany's threats and the blonde punk's lewd comments. The chat went into a frenzy. Holy shit. Plot twist. Tiffany is the real villain. She cornered her and was going to mutilate her. Where did this video come from? The quality is perfect. Seeing the questions, I smiled faintly and offered an explanation. My apologies. It's a habit of mine to ensure any location I enter has full surveillance coverage with a cloud backup, a useful precaution against vermin. The implication was clear, and the chat immediately made the connection to Marcus. Next, I pulled up the clip of Marcus's heartbroken interview. Mr. Marcus Croft, I said, the name dripping with a coldness that could freeze air. Is your skin as thick as a castle wall? Somewhere, on the other side of a screen, Marcus's face must have been turning green. I brought out the files I had spent the last 2 days poring over with Alistair. I held them up to the camera, flipping through the pages one by one. The Titan Project. A $20 million funding gap, traced to an overseas shell corporation. The legal representative is your brother-in-law. The Westgate property. Substandard materials were used, with a $5 million price difference pocketed. The man in charge was your right-hand man, Mr. Lee. And that $5 million charitable donation from 3 years ago? Funny how it ended up in your daughter's Swiss bank account. I listed each crime, my voice calm and deliberate. With every new revelation, the live chat became more frantic. With every new crime, I could imagine Marcus growing paler and paler. This wasn't even the core evidence, but it was more than enough to start a firestorm. Oh, and by the way, I added, as if it were an afterthought, a playful glint in my eye. The list I gave you? That was just the appetizer. If I don't see what's mine returned in 3 days, copies of all this will be sent simultaneously to the SEC, the IRS, the District Attorney's Office, and every major financial news outlet. I leaned into the camera, my smile turning demonic. So, Uncle, let's take a bet. Who do you think goes down first? Me, the certified psycho? Or you, the respectable man of the people? By that point, the live stream was a runaway train. The platform's moderators wouldn't have dared to shut it down. The viewership was too massive, the implications too explosive. This is nuts. Is this a public confession or a public execution? My brain just short-circuited from the info dump. This woman is terrifying. She doesn't just kill people, she destroys them. I watched the scrolling comments, my expression unchanged. Clarification complete, I stated flatly. One last thing. I'm Quinn Croft. I have a bad temper, and I'm not mentally stable. You can mess with me if you want. Just be prepared to have your entire world dug up by the roots. With that, I ended the stream. The whole broadcast lasted less than 20 minutes. But those 20 minutes were enough to create a tsunami online and to nail Marcus Croft and his family to a public pillar of shame. Sophie, who had been watching beside me, was completely stunned. She stared at the blank screen, then at me, her mouth hanging open. Sister, is that it? It's over? What else? I said, starting the car again. Waste 2. Much time talking to trash and you start to stink. The effect of the live stream was immediate. Before we even got home, Alistair's phone was ringing off the hook. There were calls from the media, from business partners, and from panicked board members demanding an emergency meeting. Alistair's hand was shaking as he answered the calls, but for the first time, he stood up straight. In the most brutal way possible, I had shattered the family peace cage he'd been living in and forced him to see the truth. It was either them or us. My daughter, her methods are terrifying, but that was brilliant. His thoughts were a mix of lingering fear and pure, unadulterated pride. Evelyn was laughing and crying at the same time, hugging me and calling me the savior of the Croft family. The consequences for Marcus came swiftly. Less than an hour after the stream ended, the stock price of his construction company plummeted the second the market opened. The IRS and the FBI's white-collar crime division announced they were launching official investigations. He tried desperately to call Alistair, but we ignored every call. The villagers didn't fare well either. Their small town was implicated in a number of human trafficking cases. The mayor was the ringleader. He was sent to prison, where he would spend the rest of his miserable life. My foster parents were also jailed for their role in selling children. Marcus, in a last desperate act, actually tried to hire thugs to get revenge on us. It was pathetic. The goons he sent didn't even make it to the front door before I dealt with them quietly, leaving them with broken arms and legs on Marcus's own doorstep. I included a little note, written in my own jagged scrawl. Next time, I'll send back pieces of your daughter. That finally broke him. The next morning, he showed up at our gate, stripped of all his former arrogance. He brought every liquid asset he had and a stack of signed transfer agreements. He looked less like a corporate titan and more like a stray dog begging for scraps. Brother, I was wrong. I've brought everything. Please, I'm begging you, have mercy, let me go. He was on his knees, weeping, a pathetic shadow of his former self. Alistair looked down at the brother who had oppressed him for years, his heart a storm of conflicting emotions. In the end, he just sighed and had someone take the documents. Marcus, he said, his voice cold. You reap what you sow. As for Tiffany, between the public humiliation of the live stream and my private threat, her mind apparently snapped. Marcus shipped her overseas to a private sanatorium, where, it was said, she would scream in terror at the sight of anyone who even vaguely resembled me. The parasites infesting the Croft family had been purged. Alistair, newly invigorated, cleaned house at the company, rooting out the last of Marcus's loyalists. A fresh energy swept through the corporation. The way he looked at me had changed. The fear and worry were gone, replaced by total trust and reliance. Evelyn and Sophie now treated me as the undeniable pillar of the family. Life, it seemed, had quieted down. At night, I returned to my old habit, polishing my butcher knife. Its mirrored surface reflected my face, calm, impassive, but with a wildness lurking deep in my eyes. Everyone calls me a psycho. Maybe I am. But in this world where the strong devour the weak, it's a hell of a lot more satisfying to be a sharp, capable psycho than a helpless victim waiting to be slaughtered. I wonder whose blood will be on my blade next. I can't wait to find out.
Moral of the story: never bully the quiet kid, because they might not be quiet, they might just be buffering. Skull. Also, if your long-lost daughter pulls up with a butcher knife and a business strategy, maybe just support her dreams. Family problems can be solved in two ways: therapy, or going live and exposing everyone with receipts. Mobile phone fire. Personally, I'm not saying choose violence. But if you do, at least have good Wi-Fi and backup footage.